Stone Cold Prose, building better words.
Some years ago, Joss Whedon, who is not in favor nowadays, but who I'm sure will be again, because everybody loves a comeback story, lamented the fact that there were no new narratives coming out of Hollywood. Now, this may seem strange, coming from the guy who created two intellectual properties in his career so far, the Buffyverse and what might be called the Firefly-verse. But Joss was right. In recent years, there's been a steep decline in movies which give birth to bold new universes with memorable characters. Instead, we get endless visits to the same old wells. Indiana Jones, Star Trek, Star Wars, the MCU, the DCU, Middle-earth, James Bond, Harry Potter, Hellraiser, even Michael Myers and Leatherface, etc., and so on. One well which has been drilled more than Jenna Jameson on a Saturday night when the fleet's in town is Alien. Tonight, I had the sorry pleasure of watching the 9th film in the Alien franchise, Alien Romulus. Now, Alien Romulus is a bad movie. It's a really bad movie. But more than that, it's a prime example of what's wrong with movie making, with storytelling nowadays. And no, this has nothing to do with wokeism or the intrusion of political ideology into cinema, specifically, or entertainment generally. Don't worry, this ain't that kind of video. No. This problem strikes much deeper. It may actually be a symptom of the age we live in, a symptom of the intrusion of technology into our minds, our hearts, and our souls themselves. Hi, guys. Welcome back to Stone Cold Prose, where we build better words, better thoughts, and better men. I'm Miles Watson, novelist and author of numerous award-winning series, including Cage Life, Sinner's Cross, and The Chronicles of Magnus. I worked in Hollywood for 13 years, law enforcement for another 10 and change, and now I break it all down and build it back better. So let's get into this. Alien Romulus. Alien Romulus is the latest in what sometimes feels like an endless series of movies trying to exploit the legacy of Ridley Scott's 1979 sci-fi horror classic, Alien. It's a testament to the strength of that superb, groundbreaking, and almost unbelievably influential movie that more than a quarter of a century later, the concept is still playing out on movie screens across the world, and not just movie screens. A few years ago, when I was still working making video game trailers, I had the sort of pleasure of working on Aliens Colonial Marines, a video game that actually got sued because the trailer made the game look much better than it actually was. Yeah, we were that good. Ant Farm, baby. My point is that Alien was a masterpiece, and it was probably inevitable that there would be sequels. And the first one of them, Aliens, which came out, I think, in 1985, is also a masterpiece in its own right. But please take note that I said masterpiece in its own right, because I'm choosing that phrase specifically. James Cameron, who directed Aliens, was smart enough to make a movie which mimicked the aesthetics of the original film without imitating the substance. Indeed, the movies are not really in the same genre, although their gears mesh quite neatly. Instead of a horror movie with a sci-fi setting like Alien, he made an action movie with horror elements in a sci-fi setting. In other words, he stayed true to the original, but he didn't repeat it. He struck a bold trail in a different direction, expanding the universe created in Ridley Scott's original, and what's more, and what's similar to what he did in Terminator 2, Cameron completed the circuit of his main character's story arc, her personal development as a human being. Ripley, the survivor of Alien, enters Aliens as a deeply traumatized woman with a lot of emotional and psychological baggage. She has to face her demons and dump that baggage in Aliens in order to save herself and do what she couldn't do the first time, which is save some of the others with her. My point here is that Alien and Aliens both represent movies which are inherently good stories on their own, but also by creating a rich world and then expanding it with new ideas, show the power of the screenwriter's imaginations. Alien is a good movie for many, many reasons, but the two most crucial of its many fine elements is the fact that all 7 of the characters on the doomed ship Nostromo are so well drawn that we're compelled to care about them, which heightens the suspense as they're unfortunately picked off one by H.R. Giger's repulsively beautiful monster. And also that the world R7 inhabits feels real even though it's set on a spaceship in the distant future, in part because there is so little exposition. Everything we learn about this future world comes out in context, just like real life. Aliens is similarly superb with its character and world development, and it gets extra props for imaginatively expanding our view of that future world. See what I'm getting at here? Now, the timing of these films is telling. The IPs I mentioned at the beginning of this video were all created between the end of the 1930s and the end of the 1980s. The 90s and the aughts, if you include the Buffyverse, which was TV only, Harry Potter, or something like The Matrix. If you move past the 90s, though, you see a sharp decline in the creation of new universes that are capturing audiences' imaginations and sparking interests in sequels and spin-offs galore. They exist, certainly. We had Game of Thrones, Avatar, Pirates of the Caribbean even, and John Wick, for example. We got 4 movies out of that, and they were all products of the aughts or better. But if we're talking numbers, and if we're talking the number of times these universes get revisited by studios looking to cash in on their popularity with the masses, if we're talking cultural resonance, there's no question the past is where it's at. Just ask the Terminator. Sorry. Now, in the last 10 years, but really for much longer, dating back to when I first arrived in Hollywood and started working in the industry, I have noticed a decline in storytelling in cinema. Now, at first, this decline I related to an increasing reluctance from corporations who run the movie studios in the first place to take risks with new material. About 1/3 of the ideas that hit my desk when I was doing development leads in 2009, 2010, 2011 were prequels or sequels or remakes or reboots. That number actually increased over time, and a lot of the ideas in development that were green-lighted were these old rehashed franchises rather than new ones. It seemed to me that corporate Hollywood was hedging its bets more than usual and trying to milk nostalgia, particularly Gen X nostalgia, by sticking to old proven intellectual properties like Star Trek that had theoretically built-in audiences and pre-existing name recognition. Okay, maybe that was a shrewd business move. The MCU, for example, was a safe bet for a long, long time. But there comes a time when you go to the well once too often, and instead of water, you get mud. Post-Endgame MCU is a pretty good example of this. But to stay on mission, we're going to talk aliens. Now, I'm not going to drag you through the 9 fucking alien movies that have been made from 1979 on. But I am going to say that if the series had ended with aliens, I would have been perfectly happy. Like Terminator 2, it closed the circuit and completed the story. At least it completed Ripley's part of the story, to my satisfaction, without attempting to solve every riddle and mystery left over from the first film. 7 movies later, however, we keep kicking this piñata, hoping more candy will spill out of it, and Alien Romulus is the result. Now, why did I hate this movie? Because Alien Romulus is not a movie. It is, however, a really good example of what a movie would look like that was written by AI. What I mean by this is that AI does not actually create anything in the artistic sphere, because AI has no imagination. All it can do is plagiarize the images and words and sounds made by human beings and then cobble them together into what might be called an outcome or a result. There won't be anything new there. It'll merely be a rehash, however clever or pretty looking, of pre-existing ideas come up with by human brains. A synthesis, but not a thesis, so to speak. Now, Romulus, and I'm pausing here to issue a Class 1 spoiler alert, so click off now if you haven't seen the movie and you intend on doing so, is the story of a bunch of forgettable 20-something characters, stuck on a dismal mining planet that suspiciously resembles the mining colony in Outland, we won't go there, who want to escape their dead-end existences as drudges for the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, and sneak off in a shuttle to salvage what they think is a ship or an abandoned space station, so they can fuck off to some garden planet where the sun's always shining and everybody's happy, yada, yada, yada. They get to the station, only to find it's overrun with aliens. If I had to describe what's next, I'd say it's basically a kind of fan fiction supercut of Alien, Aliens, Alien 4, with a hefty dose of Prometheus and a sprinkle of Alien 3. Almost every scene and story beat, some of the music, and all of the movie's few memorable lines belong to those other films. Indeed, the only dialogue I can remember, and I just saw the fucking movie, is when someone is repeating dialogue from Alien or Aliens. Probably the most disgusting thing the movie does is include Ian Holm, who memorably played Ash in Alien, as a major character in this film, the trouble being that Ian Holm died years before this movie was made. He's simply an AI CGI creation that looks like shit, terrible CGI by the way, and spews embarrassingly terrible dialogue, riddled with dumb exposition. Not surprisingly, the only memorable thing he says in this piece of shit movie is a repeat of one of his best lines from Alien. I can't lie to you about your chances, but you have my sympathies. Great line. For me, the desecration of Ian Holm in this way, forcing him to appear in this shit movie after he's dead, is emblematic of a larger problem, and that is a failure of imagination. Alien was a great movie because it was so damned imaginative. The representation of the combined visions of Dan O'Bannon, H.R. Giger, and Ridley Scott. Aliens is a great movie because James Cameron combined his own bold vision to the vision of those who came before him, and made something that was both an extension of the old thing and the creation of something new. Alien Romulus has no imagination or vision at all. It's merely a variation on a theme. The creative element inherent in good movie making is missing here. This film is a desert of ideas, a kind of wasteland populated by the pretty relics of other men's artistic endeavors, and I think I know why. Years before AI began to openly threaten the existence of all creative endeavor, whether it's songwriting, musicianship, creative writing, poetry, graphic design, etc., and so on, technology seems to have overwhelmed and diminished the creative faculty in a lot of people. In recent decades, we've seen the increasing intrusion of technology into just, for example, music. The more expansive the tools used to make making music easier, the less human involvement in music there becomes, to the point now where humans don't have to have much actual talent, or if they have it, don't have to use it, in order to produce music at a very high level. This is painfully true, by the way, when you turn on the radio or watch the halftime show. It's also true when you watch movies. The tools we have created to assist us in being creative have become so easy to access and provide such an enormous array of bells and whistles to play with that it's easy to get lost in all the sound and fury and forget to signify anything, to go all style and no substance. If you saw Lord of the Rings, you notice that between the first movie and the third, there's a drop-off in the human interaction and warmth. A noticeable reduction in live action shots. Almost everything is done in front of green screens and is CGI infused. Peter Jackson became so intrigued and obsessed with the technological tools now at his disposal that his focus on the human actors began to blur. Now, this didn't fatally injure Lord of the Rings, but if you suffered through the Hobbit trilogy, well, you went from a series that tasted like mom's home-baked apple pie to a series that tasted like microwave defrosted apple pie substance you bought at a gas station at 3 in the morning on the Jersey Turnpike. The tools take center stage. The humans stand on the periphery doing what they can with what they have, which ain't much. Now, human beings are the ultimate tool makers, but there are times when the tools we make can also make us soft, make us dependent upon their use to the extent that our muscles atrophy. And when we need those muscles, they don't work properly. Special effects are great, but without a story, they're just visual noise. Action is fine, but without a plot, they're just stunts. A whole is more than the sum of its AI collected parts. The crucial difference between a human being and a machine, the sole real advantage we have, presumably, is that we have the creative spark and they do not. As Captain Kirk once said of a machine, granted, it can work 1,000, 1,000,000 times faster than the human brain, but it can't make a value judgment. It hasn't intuition. It can't think. Now, what he might have said more precisely is that a computer cannot hear the music of the spheres. It hasn't imagination. Only, I say this again, the ability to synthesize the imaginations of human beings at high speed and in an organized way. And that distinction has a difference. Alien Romulus seems to me a culmination of dubious and disturbing trends. Visually, it looks every bit as beautiful as any of its more illustrious predecessors. And it pays homage to all of them, literally. The movie works hard to do what it sets out to do. There is craft here, and there may even be passion, but Romulus lacks any innovation, any creativity. It is not the bold execution of one man's vision. It's merely a warmed-up, carefully redressed banquet of leftovers cooked by other better men. Although crafted, I presume, entirely by human beings, it has the look and feel of AI, visually stunning and yet creatively void. Now, it seems to me a foretaste of things to come. Movies that offer us nothing new, just human ideas repackaged by machines or by people who've come to rely so much on machines to stimulate their creative faculty that they can no longer function without machines, or that they produce product indistinguishable from machines. And folks, to me, that's a lot scarier than a drooling CGI alien. Guys, if you enjoyed today's video, please remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and remember to check out my books on Amazon. Link is in the description. I drop scripted content every Friday at 3 p.m., shorts almost every day, and unscripted rambles whenever rage moves me to do so. See you next time, and until then, stay cold and don't fucking take orders from a machine.